Hey all, today I'm going to read Threefold, Section 4, Part 5. When Guinness, Junio, and Tsuyoshi reached round 17, Hugo noticed a young Lunastran woman enter the tavern. They laughed and joked. Hugo wondered how long they would last. Junio and Akura, Guinness and Mateo. He hadn't known any of them that long, but the pair of siblings and individuals he found interesting. They shared their differences. He couldn't miss those, but the similarities, which at first glance appeared harder to spot, began to catch his eye. He felt it was part of the reason Junior and Guinness were slowly getting along, despite their differences. Hugo would never believe it right to take someone else's life, but Junior had him thinking about what his actions would be if he lost someone important to him in a brutal way. Nothing would turn Hugo away from doing what he felt was right for others, but Guinness had him wondering if the best way to help some people was to do nothing for them at all. Akira, Jackson, and Mateo stood together. If there was a chance their plan was sinister, he couldn't think that way. Funny, Junior and Guinness both had him debating his faith in people. Akira, Jackson, and Mateo were family. He wouldn't doubt them. He would prepare. He, Guinness, and Junior would have to prepare. He hoped they would understand and figure that out. Telling them this wouldn't do them any good. They had to come to this understanding on their own. From what he knew of them, this was the only way they'd accept it as the truth. "You're new here," the young woman he noticed earlier said. She came and sat at his table. I am," Hugo said, a bit surprised by her arrival. "I'm visiting." She was attractive, but appeared out of place. Compared to the other local women in the tavern, she seemed an outsider. While the other local women wore their dark brown or black hair long in waves or curls, she wore her hair short, black, streaked blue and purple. The other local woman's eyes were a brown or copper, soft, gentle, or warm, depending on the woman. The young woman before him had dark brown eyes, which seemed fierce, mischievous, and even sly. The way she was dressed was the complete opposite of the other local women too. While their clothing left them mostly covered, hers revealed her arms, legs, and midriff. The local men and women had their eyes on her. They followed her with their eyes and gave her looks, but the looks of hate they continued to give him were more noticeable. This woman, who was about his age, knew she was attractive, and the attention it brought her. Hugo refused to look directly at her, convinced her beauty would catch hold of him too. He didn't want to admit he found her attractive. He didn't want her to see she had an effect on him, especially if she was used to getting everyone's attention. "What brings you to my table?" Hugo asked. "It's the best one to keep an eye on my cousin," she said. After declining a free drink someone sent her, she nodded towards Tsuyoshi. She sighed. "The parents of the woman he loves disapprove of him, so he's been driven to drink. They can't be together, and he won't fight for her. They can't get over tradition." "But you can," Hugo said. "You noticed," she said and smiled. Who wouldn't, he wanted to say, but didn't. "I usually don't do this," she said playfully, "but I'm Chiyoko." She leaned forward on the table and rested her head on her hands. "Hugo," he said, "I'm with the two guys helping your cousin drown his sorrows." He nodded toward them. "Is there something bringing them down?" Chiyoko asked. Hugo turned his head and watched Guinness. Chiyoko watched along with him. They watched Guinness rustle up some out-of-town women, a small group of Lunese women. "My new friend here is feeling pretty bad," Guinness said. "Do you think you all could lift his spirits? I would appreciate it. Me and my buddy Junio here can keep the rest of you company." He grinned, a wild grin. Guinness's grin reminded Hugo of Mateo when he grinned at Junio. Unlike Mateo's grin, which appeared roguish, Guinness's seemed more charming, a bit more sincere. Guinness turned toward Junio, and Junio revealed a short smile and tipped his hat to the ladies, which caused a few of them to smile and a few to giggle. No, Hugo said, they're bonding. He smiled before he and Chiyoko laughed together. You want to get out of here? Chiyoko asked kindly. Go for a walk? The tone of her voice suggested something. To Hugo, she sounded as if she could finally relax, as if she came in tense and let herself calm down in his presence. The small voice in the back of his head told him to go for it. You want her, he told the voice to shut it. I would, Hugo said. I really want to. Honestly, I have to make sure these two make it back to our room. Wouldn't you be worried about your cousin? I'm actually surprised you're worried about me. But he didn't say this. People don't look at me for the reasons you think, Chiyoko said. Her words struck him. Sounded like she wasn't worried about him because, unlike some others, she was a decent human being. He glanced around at the patrons once again and found they aimed their looks of hate, disdain, and disgust at both of them. I apologize, Hugo said, looking back at her. I assumed, and you know the rest. She waved him off. He'll be fine. I have another cousin who works here. She'll take care of him. If she didn't, it would ruin her perfect reputation. She turned away from him. Apparently, she hadn't meant for that to slip out. They shared a moment of silence before Hugo spoke. You wish you were more like her, but you hate thinking that way because it somehow says who you are isn't good enough. She caught her breath for a moment before she faced him. Huh, you're pretty good, she spoke in a soft voice. She, shifting her eyes to her hands, and picked at her purple nails. Are you a telepath? An empath? No, Hugo said. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. He related to her, and he spoke those words for both her and himself. I'm sorry, I just figured. He didn't know what to say. He thought of Jackson, remembering how he sometimes felt about him. It was the expression on her face. He had worn that same expression a few times in the past himself. She gets on my nerves, Chiyoko said, but I love her like a sister. She said this in the same soft voice. I'm not taking no for an answer. Walk with me. I want to show you around. Hugo noticed her mischievous grin. She took his hand and dragged him off. He didn't fight her when she pulled him away. He laughed. She sighed. Women were his weakness. When they left the inn, Chiyoko starting their walk through town, Hugo stopped her. He didn't mind if people watched him or started trouble with him, but he never allowed that trouble to extend to others if he could help it. You don't want to walk with me, Hugo said, giving her a short smile. I don't care if you're a Solaresian, Chiyoko said. Like you don't care that I have short hair and dress this way. I don't, Hugo said, but I'm an energist too. You're worried about my safety, Chiyoko said. No one is going to try anything. My family owns that inn and brings a lot of business to this town. They'll mind their manners. Are you a telepath? An empath? Hugo asked her. No, Chiyoko said. I'm an energist, just like you. So don't worry, and let me give you a tour. Hugo wanted to talk with her more. He heard it in her voice, the longing for a sense of peace and to find her way. He could identify with those longings. She didn't seem distant anymore. She seemed close and real. Talking to her could keep him believing in man and man's inherent search to travel in the right direction. This was a reason to delay Junio, and Guinness's work until tomorrow. All right, guys, that was part 5. That's it for today. Tomorrow I'll read part 6, and I hope you enjoyed and you continue listening. Thanks again.